Mhm.
Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for February 20th, 2026. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating and sharing my screen. And also present are Ralph Kohler and Pallavi Singh. Thank you both for coming. Um, so let's have a look today at issue 3564234. Add display builder agnostic overview page for display modes. Um, The description of the issue in the issue summary is sort of complicated, um, but here I've got a local copy of Drupal where I've checked out the merge request for this issue, and I can show you pretty easily going into content types um, and manage display for any content type. Um, And let's see. Can I collapse yes, I'll collapse the navigation bar. There we go. Because otherwise well, interesting. Anyway, I want to get local tasks. Oh, here we go. The submenu under Manage Display is displayed vertically here.
Would you try to reload? Maybe it
There we
just,
go.
yeah.
And with the navigation bar collapsed, um, this is Umami, as I usually install, which has more enabled view modes, which is why um, the window wasn't wide enough until I collapsed the navigation bar. So there is this new overview tab. Um, this page lists available view modes for article. Click Manage on any enabled view mode, configure which fields are shown and how they're displayed. You can enable or disable view modes as needed. Um, and you get these two tables, one for the enabled display modes, which are also these second level um, tabs, and then disabled display modes. There are only two. Um, and you can either navigate um, by clicking the button Manage, or you get the same thing by going to the second level tab. Um, I wonder, let's have a look at this link here. So the link text is just manage, and it has an href. So that looks to me like an accessibility problem. Um, all of these links have the same link text manage,
Yeah.
which is basically the same problem as click here, click here, click here, click here, or show more, show more, show more, show more. Um,
Context is missing basically.
yes. So that looks to me like there's room for improvement there. Um, let's see, I posted in Slack my first impressions, which didn't include that observation. I only noticed that now. And anything else notice so far?
Mm. Yet.
So one of the things I noticed on this page is that there's a lot of white space in that table. And this is something I've learned from you, Ralph, that um, someone who uses screen magnification can see, say, card comment and says, okay, I want to either change which fields are displayed, or maybe I want to disable it. And I have to go across this long bit of white space until I get to the Manage button. And if I accidentally cross the table border into one of the other rows, I'll click on the wrong button. Um, so I think having that much white space is an accessibility issue. Am I right there?
Yeah, but it's in that regard, it's also rooted in the problem that there is no description yet, which provided would provide some sort of guardrails and also
Right.
context.
Um, so, and I see in the Zoom chat, Ralph, you've given us a link to a standard Drupal install.
Yep. And also, not sure if it's possible on the on Zoom, but also there are no tooltips for hovering to get the context.
I didn't notice any tooltips, and we looked at the markup, right?
Yeah.
And there wasn't any title attribute. And
Yeah,
again,
because
I'm
I
not saying,
mean, if you, for example, are a sighted user not using a assisted technology like a screen reader, but have the magnification on, and then if you hover, it would be also helpful that you, if you hover about one of those manage buttons to know it's if it's for the card, if it's for the card summon, common or common alt, and so forth.
right? So let's see. So let us remind ourselves of what it looks like before this issue. Content types, article, manage
Oh, shall
display.
I
What's
check
that?
out? I've already checked out the merge request with that on that installation. I can revert back to main.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Here.
There
Yeah.
we go. Um, and here, this is based on the standard profile, so there aren't as many things here, so it fits even with the navigation bar taking up some of the page width. Um, so there's no overview tab. That's what's added by the new issue. The default tab looks a lot like the other two. It has a couple of extra things. This custom display settings collapsed field set. Um, and that is the old method for enabling additional display modes. Um, I've never loved that. This collapsed display. It's I guess Aaron would say it violates the principle that a form should just do one thing, and here we've shoved an additional um, related but different thing onto the form. And I think it is an advantage of the issue that it gets rid of this. Um, the accessibility here, I think, is less problematic. Um, each of these checkboxes, and there's probably even some. Uh, it's an input ID equals class type checks name display modes custom of full and value equals full. So the value and the name distinguish each of these checkboxes from the others. Um, layout options. So let me go to the default. Do we still have layout options? We have to have it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is still there.
Um,
basically the custom display settings is the only fields that it got removed on
Right.
the default one.
So I think that's an improvement. I never liked the um, this details element that's closed by default. On the other hand, this link, manage view modes, got lost.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And if you want to create a new view mode, that's where you have to go. Um, in the new one, you can still get it from the navigation bar that I've collapsed. Where is it? Under structure, display
Yeah,
modes.
structures, display modes, and then view modes.
Yeah. So I can still get there from the navigation menu, but I think it's an advantage to having the explicit link um, here on the page. And I think it would be pretty easy to add that to this help text or description text at the top.
Um, should
I'm
it?
sorry, not this one. On the overview
Yeah,
page
okay.
is what I meant.
Yep. And I agree. Or strictly speaking, looking at the installation of yours, if you tab through all the secondary tabs, the help text, no, it's different on the first page and the second page. But still, I wonder, would it still make sense in a second sentence to link to that display settings page on each of those in each of those help texts? Or is it better only on the overview page in the help text?
Oh, so you're asking whether we should add a link to the view modes here?
Yeah.
I would put it just on the overview page. And this is where we list the available display modes. And you don't know that you want to add one unless you're looking at that list.
Yeah. It would be the cleaner and more specific context to provide that information. That's, I agree.
And and it's also consistent with the current usage where the default has this details element and the link, and
Yeah, that's
the
true.
other pages don't have that. So let's see. Let me check what I wrote in Slack last night. Um, oh yeah. Yeah, every change has some drawbacks. If you actually want to change the default display mode, it's an extra click because from the navigation menu, you get to content types and then you get to manage display. That's one click. So in the old system, that would take you directly to managing the default. But here it's an extra click. You have to click either here. Again, my secondary menu items are now displayed vertically because the navigation bar is taking up some width, or down here. So it's an extra click to get to this page if this is the page you are trying to get to. Um, okay, I said it is more consistent than the current approach, and we've already sort of talked about that. The the form for the default display doesn't have that element that none of the other pages have. I've talked about the details element, the manage view modes link, and the horizontal white space on the overview tab. Um, so those are all the things I noticed in my first impression. And then today I also noticed the accessibility problems with all of these manage links. Um, so there was a question on the issue. Godot is late asked whether it needs a usability review. Um, and the reply is that Sakrina, what exactly is her role? Usability and accessibility topic maintainer, is that it?
I don't know, honest. Or is it usability manager? Not
The
sure.
user experience manager,
Ah, okay.
Sakrina, and the second one or provisional one is Emma Harrell. Um, so based on that, they felt they didn't need to tag it for usability review. Um, I wonder if anyone discussed accessibility.
No.
Um,
But one other question I would have, is it possible to set somewhere one display mode to default at all? Because looking at basically the available view modes for content, there I don't see any default.
right.
And
Default is special. You notice there isn't a drop button. You cannot disable the default. You can only manage it. And I guess if you go to this
yeah,
page,
but when I
default,
read when I yeah, that I understand. But my point is basically when I read default, the expectation is that I'm able to set a display mode to default somewhere. That's more of a wording problem in that context.
right. Um, so yeah, it does not satisfy that expectation. That's just not the way it works. Default is hard coded. It has a machine name, which is, I guess if I hover over this and you look at the last part of the URL on the bottom of the browser window, the machine name is default, and that is hard coded. You cannot um, assign a random view mode to be the default one.
Yeah. But basically default means all the available fields on a content type.
Oh, that is not what it means. Um, it means that if you are rendering um, a node, um, then and you haven't specified a different display mode, then it uses the default display mode.
Oh,
Um,
what's
and
false
it's
default?
not listed here, or if you have a content block and you haven't specified full, then it will use the default. Um, or if you have some page using or some block using the teaser mode, and then you decide to go and disable the teaser view mode, um, right? You can disable anything other than the default. Then wherever
Mm.
you used to see the teaser, you will now see the default.
Hmm. Just test. 1 second. Page and header. Blocks. Block. Okay. Oh, excuse me. Could you perhaps go to structure and block types and then pick one of them and go to manage
Just what?
display just for the comparison with because the available display modes for blocks for block content is just full and that is disabled and that way it's interesting with having the default and the name that is picked for it.
So let's see, you can enable it. And oh, that's interesting. When you enable it, it shows up in the table, and we don't display the empty table of disabled ones, but it's not shown
The full one.
in the secondary tabs.
Yeah.
If I reload the page, yes.
Ah, that's a bug.
Um, let's see what happens over here. Um, so I go
Uh,
to the
overview.
default. No, look at the icon. I'm looking at your site now. So this
Ah, it's
is
mine. Okay.
not using the pull request. It doesn't have the overview. If I enable the search index view mode and save, haha, that loads automatically.
Yes and
Be-
no, but here you have a form, you're saving the form, and in the context of that NA of the overview page, you enable without in air quotes saving the form.
right. I mean, that's why it happens,
Yeah,
but I think the user experience doesn't care about that. Um, that this is just a link, right?
yeah,
Let's turn on the browser tools again. Yeah, it's just a link. Um, and it does not trigger a full page reload. So I get this page not found. Yes,
yeah.
or access denied. Okay.
That is a bug.
Well, for forgive me for feeling self-important, but I think that our group does good work, and it always annoys me when people decide, nah, we don't need usability review.
Yeah,
And so I feel a little schadenfreude. I'm not proud of this, but I do feel a little schadenfreude saying, ha ha, we found some things that you
that's
really should fix before
yeah,
admitting this issue. And someone reviewed it and declared it RTVC without noticing this.
yeah. And
But
that's
I
also go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go.
Just the point I wanted to make is simply that's the advantage I see in that group context to have several pairs of eyes looking onto a problem. And due to the fact that we have a regular meeting, it's also a sort of a alignment and a certain quality standard from that point of view. And I think that is beneficial for every issue to have that basically group review. And
Absolutely. And the more different viewpoints we have, if we could get more beginners to come to these meetings, that would be a great thing.
Yeah,
And even if my motives aren't pure, it's a good thing for the sake of the Drupal project that we find these things before the issues get committed.
exactly. And therefore, I think it shouldn't be rushed in air quotes. And it makes sense to have basically, yeah, someone from the accessibility context, people looking over it, as well as from the usability context from this group. It's good to have basically those subsystem maintainers to look at it individually, but still think a group context is beneficial, and therefore it
Okay.
shouldn't be bypassed.
Um, have we said enough about this issue? Is there anything more you want to add?
Yeah, from a personal perspective, the naming of default, I consider problematic on closer look. In particular, with that enable and disable functionality now, um, I consider it even more important, to be honest. And also, yeah, descriptions are missing, but that we've already
Right.
mentioned.
So descriptions, I guess, going back to your site, um,
Tooltips.
so there's a description field that almost no one ever bothers to fill out, but that's a question of
Mm.
configuration. So let me not delete it. Um, so maybe the standard profile should have descriptions for these things. Um, and yeah, we could even suggest that on the issue that if you're going to present this table, one solution to the empty white space problem would be to put some text in there.
Exactly.
So that would be something um, for the standard profile and the umami
Yeah. But
profile.
definitely a follow-up. It shouldn't hold back necessarily this issue, because otherwise the only option would be simply to remove the description column to make the distance between the name column and operations column um, to closer proximity. And that I also don't consider the right choice. So
So let's see, using browser tools, I see that the description column is very wide. So the other solution to the too much white space problem is just don't make the table so wide.
or an option might be add a check. Um, if basically the descriptions are empty, then make the column width more narrow, maybe. That could be also an option.
Right. Yeah, I just don't want to make it wider than it has to be. So yes,
Yeah,
if there is description text in there, then this is reasonable.
but
Although,
1 second, I'll just test on a yeah 30-inch display. Um, that is a good benchmark always. Is it possible to post screenshots in the chat?
um, I'm not sure, but if
Oh, 1 second, I simply posted it on Slack. That's easier.
yeah,
But that is always a good benchmark of mine, stretching any page to extensive widescreen. That surfaces also certain problems. Where's the issue for today? There it is. Post it.
Okay, so let's see, I should be able to download this and then open it in my browser so we can see it. Uh, there we go. There's the download button. That goes to my downloads folder. So open downloads. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. Right.
Or maybe another option might also be, at least in the context of enable and disabled on for tables for that enable and disable pages, there you only have three columns, and that way on, yeah, widescreen on pages like that, add a maximum width to the table so it doesn't get that wide in the first place. Because even if you add, for example, a description, you would still have wide gaps that way. And the odds are quite low that there will be any more columns added in that context. You only need then the title, the description, and basically the operations. And therefore,
So you're suggesting just a maximum width on the table?
yeah. Otherwise, you always will run into that problem. And
Right. And it would be nice to have the two tables consistent. So if one of them has some descriptions and the other one doesn't, we wouldn't want the one without descriptions to be much narrower than one
yeah,
with descriptions.
agreed.
Um, the the other option, which I don't really like, but you could put operations either first or second. So either display mode operations description or operations display mode description. And we sort of do that in other contexts when we have a column of checkboxes. We typically put that on the far left rather than on the far right. Um, but there are, there are a lot of other contexts where we have an operations column with drop buttons, a lot like this. And in that case, we wouldn't want to be inconsistent with that.
Yep, right. And also the point, those checkboxes are only used if you want to have bulk operations available. And in that context, with enable or disable display modes, the likes are that you only change single pages, and that way it wouldn't make much sense.
So let's see, what's another admin page where we have this operations column?
Um,
Is it manage fields? Um, let's see. Yeah, so I think we need to deal with this. So I will look to see if there's an existing issue. But all of our admin tables, or many of them, have this problem, and we need a more comprehensive solution.
Yeah, but in that particular page you've opened here with manage fields, that is where that is the one we've discussed a few weeks ago, about the problem about table semantics, where you cramp basically attributes like the machine name and the cardinality into a single field and
Into a single column. Yep.
into a single column, yeah, in a single cell. That was the term I was looking for. And yeah, that's also broken. And I still I'm unable to use the page because it's a visual stress for me to process it.
Mm.
And also the other problem is under field types, as you already show here with entity reference, you have the reference type media and the media type image, which strictly speaking is also a column. But that brings the problem in different contexts, in different fields. And one, you have entity references for media, and then you have, for example, for, was it files? I'm not sure which it was. Can't remember right now, but that way it makes it difficult, at least for that field type and for entity references, to stick with create separate dedicated columns for them. That doesn't work. For the field, for those within in the cells for the field and the column, it works. For the field type, it doesn't work.
Okay. Admin content, we have both the checkboxes for um, bulk operations and also the drop buttons in the operations column. I guess the simple thing about this table is it has a lot of columns, but none of them are very long. There's no open-ended description
Yeah, but it
column,
could be because it's basically a view, and you could add additional columns.
right? And again, if you're looking at it on a very wide browser window, you get some extra white space added to the first column.
Yeah, but there's also a problem on, was it? I think it was on the display modes page. Yeah, if you go to display modes under configuration, under structure,
Okay, contents, files, which is the structure.
structure down, 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 further down. Yeah, that one. And then
And then,
display modes, and then view modes. Um, there you also have the same problem with that on large screens.
right, so this is an existing problem. And I guess when they added, what was it? When they changed this page, part of the justification was, well, it's an existing problem and we're not going to fix that as part of this issue. So let's make sure that there is an issue
Yeah,
for too much white space in admin tables. So we already have the feature that some columns can be declared less important and they will go away on narrow screens. Hmm.
which is also not that ideal.
Well, but if you have a very narrow screen, then that can be problematic. So I guess none of these are declared as as lower priority. But how about this? On a narrow screen, admin content has just check boxes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just 6 columns rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So two of them are declared as low priority. So we have ways of dealing with narrow screens, but we don't have a way of dealing with very wide screens. Um,
In that context, the issue is fixing managed display um, or improving it. But that reminds me again to the following issue. And I still think uh, it would be good to improve that as well. Because I still think that one is broken.
Whoops. That is somehow I didn't copy the whole link that you posted.
Issue number 33444498.
Thank you. Manage form display by untwining field widgets that belong to the main content and sidebar. So we're getting close to the end of the hour.
But yeah, that is out of the scope for right now. But it's just reminded me because it's in the same context of a content type. And that other one is a pet peeve of mine. So, but yeah, but just to summarize the points for the issue at hand. Which
so
points
just
should be done?
just briefly, that issue that you mentioned, here's the sidebar and a bunch of the fields are in here, and here's the main content of the page and title, body, image are in there. And you would like to separate title, body, image, the ones that are in the main content area from the fields like URL,
Yeah,
alias, comment settings, authoring information, menu settings. Are any of those fields?
exactly. Most of them, and some are basically removable or disableable, while others are not, and you're also unable to change the order on the form display and so forth. And it's just misleading and confusing. And yeah, in particular on complex pages with more fields, it becomes really, really challenging to distinguish which is which and what is the context for each of them.
Okay.
And they're basically masked objects because each field is an object and you're unable to distinguish which is which, and that's bad.
Okay. Well, we are at the end of the hour. Thank you again for coming. Um, I will post a comment and set that the issue we started with, um, back to needs work. Um, and I guess I'll also look for an existing issue about admin tables that get too wide. But if either of you wants to also look for that issue, you might save me the trouble.
Yeah, I can
And
also look later on. But
have a
just
good,
one brief question.
go ahead.
Which of the points we've mentioned should go into a follow-up issue?
I think only the one about table width.
Okay.
Um,
Or maybe, yeah, that is adding a description for the default, for the standard profile, I guess. Probably
Right.
should also go into a follow-up
Yeah.
because that would hold back that technicality here that is added in this issue. And yeah, because then you have the same problem like with, for example, the add fields issue, where it took also quite a while to come to a consensus. So,
Yep.
okay. Yeah, I have to go to grocery shopping now, but I'll quickly look afterwards for the table with if there is any issue yet.
Thank you. So have a good weekend and hope you can
Likewise.
make it again next week.
Yep. See you next week then. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.